Right now, joining us in the booth is a very special guest, Senator Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts. Senator, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be with you.
And you have the unique experience of having run for president against Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
You bet. I lost.
Well, but why, in your view, is she the right person for the job right now? And how do you think she's grown into the role and established herself over the last 3.5 years?
You know, it really is the case that Kamala has a long history of fighting for families and particularly fighting for women and access to health care overall. What's happened in just the last few years has been with the decision in Dobbs so that half the population has lost a constitutionally guaranteed right. Kamala Harris has moved into the leadership position fighting and made very clear, here's the contrast between Democrats and Republicans. Right now, 30% of all women live in a state that effectively bans abortion. If Donald Trump and J.D. Vance make it to the presidency and vice presidency, it's not going to be 30%, it's going to be 100%. Kamala Harris is fighting in exactly the opposite direction. She believes that that's a decision that women and their doctors should make, and she is determined that as President of the United States, give her a Democratic Congress, and Roe versus Wade will be law of the land again. It's the right time, right moment. The other one is Kamala has fought for years to lower costs for working families, and it's a crucial issue for people right now in this moment, and she's the one who has the history and has the chops to deliver on that.
Tell us a little bit more about what specific policies and proposals you would like to see from this ticket, and have you been able to speak with them directly to offer any advice or guidance on that?
So let me just start with the proposals she has already put out.
Yeah, how do you feel about that?
I feel really good about what she's put out. So start with price gouging. You know, we have a problem that prices are just too high for families, cost too much. Inflation is something we've been talking about for a while. But the best economic studies I've seen show that about half of the increase in costs come from price gouging. Corporations that have market power who have raised their prices extraordinarily. Eggs. Remember eggs not too long ago and they just jerked the prices up? How does that happen? It happens in part because there is a company, Cal-Maine, that is a huge egg producer, doesn't have a lot of competition, so it increases its prices, and the question is, was it just passing along costs? No, what we know is they increased their profit margins by 718%. Now, look, I look at that and I say there's at least a suspicion here of price gouging. Kamala Harris, as Attorney General, went after the price gougers in following the California fires. When we were both in the Senate together, we served together and put out a proposal to deal with price gouging in the pandemic. And now she has said, as president, it's a direct attack on price increases that are affecting families right now. And she says, I'm going straight after it.
Is what she's put forward, pardon the interruption, is what she's put forward so far enough for you, or are there more specifics you'd like to see around the issue of lowering costs for families?
I'm delighted to see this. I also want to say she's also picked up on housing. And her housing proposal, the part I love the best, is she's one of the first people out there, instead of just saying, let's give people more money and somehow the market is going to correct it. We've been saying that for 25, 30 years now. She's saying what we have to do is increase the supply. And we've got to push more housing built. And she's got a plan and a direction to go to build 3 million new housing units in America. And that's the sort of thing. It brings down rents. It also means first-time homebuyers have a chance to get in the market. It means that there's housing for seniors, housing for people with disabilities, housing for people starting out, housing for people whose families are growing. So I like her approach. It's about saying, I've got good ideas. And I believe we can harness the energy and power of government to put it on the side of working families. So I think she's in the right direction.
I always come back to the question, though, of how do you pay for it? President Biden and Democrats spent trillions of dollars to green the economy, to outcompete China, to fix infrastructure and crumbling roadways. What space is left for a potential Harris administration to spend billions or trillions more on the kind of policies that she's promoting?
Ooh, now
Without compounding inflationary pressure. How does she do that responsibly?
All those things you talked about, I just want to remind everybody, were paid for. The last big expense that wasn't paid for was the Donald Trump tax cuts for millionaires, billionaires, and giant corporations. That's the one that got a lot of deficit financing out of it. But if you're asking the question, what's going to happen next year on the tax front, it's the right question. As we know, to keep the numbers low, the Republicans actually made a lot of these tax cuts expire, so we'd all pretend that they were going to cost less than they otherwise would. In fact, I think what that means is taxes are front and center no matter what. And we're going to have some choices to make. So as a nation, Donald Trump has already laid out his position, and that is cut taxes for billionaires. And in fact, about $3.5 million for every billionaire in the country, $3.5 million annually. Project 2025 explains who's going to pay for that. And the answer is middle-class families. In fact, Project 2025 says the average family of 4 will pay about $2,600 more every year in taxes. So they've got one approach to taxes. My view on this is we got a lot of space in the expiring Trump tax cuts, but also in other areas. For example, the housing bill that I'm proposing, which spends even more to build even more housing, focuses on estate taxes and says, you know, if we would just go back to the levels in the George W. Bush administration and stitch up a few of those new loopholes on weirdy trusts, we can actually raise about $500 billion. That helps pay for a whole lot of housing and gets a whole lot of first-time buyers into a home and on a path to build some real wealth.
Senator, the way you light up when you get to talk about tax policy, I will say, we only have, I think, about a minute or so left, but I have to ask you about this before we let you go. Do you think this country is ready to elect a woman president in a way that many worry the country wasn't back in 2016?
So I'm going to say it this way. We are not the same nation we were before 2016, and we actually nominated someone who, by the way, got more votes than the other guy. We are not in the same place that we were in 2020 when 4 different women stood up and held their hands up and at least got in the primary and fought it out. We are also not in the place we were before we had a woman serve as vice president so ably and strongly for 4 years. So I see America as having changed. I think this is not just Kamala Harris's moment. I think this is the moment for the United States of America, and I'm loving it.
Senator Elizabeth Warren, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.